Now tonight we have three speakers, and I'll tell you a little bit about them in a moment. One speaker comes from Service Coordination, and she's going to talk a little bit about the financial challenges that we face, and particularly with regard to support workers, respite workers, and some of the things that you really need to think about when you start to put those in place. Our second speaker is an expert, or at least I hope she's an expert, in RDSPs. And RDSPs, as many of you already know, are one of the most wonderful vehicles for helping to plan the financial future of your family member with developmental disabilities. Our third speaker is going to try and sort of broaden the picture. I call him our financial literacy person, and just sort of give you an understanding of what other things you need to think about as you go about your financial planning. So let me just introduce the three people. On the far left is Daniela Barra, and she is, did I pronounce your name properly?
Very well.
Phew. Daniela is with Service Coordination. She is the worker bank coordinator. And so obviously Daniela is well familiar with issues that families face in terms of trying to hire and keep support workers and respite situations. Just checking this handy dandy computer. Lisa Bacon is here on behalf of the Office for Disability Issues. She's with HRDC, and HRDC and CRA, as I understand it, Canada Revenue, and HRDC is Human Resources and Development Canada, right?
We're Human Resources and Skills Development. I would change your name frequently, so.
I give up. All right, whatever. In any case, one of Lisa's jobs is to do just what she's doing tonight, is to explain to people what the RDSP system is about and how to make it work for you. And our third speaker tonight is John Sakely. He has been in the financial industry for over 20 years. And he is also Vice President of Advocates, which, help me, John.
Financial Advisors Association of Canada.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So he has a broader perspective that I know that you'll be interested in hearing. What we've asked each speaker to do is to speak for 10 to 15 minutes. I believe all of them have handouts that you'll be able to pick up. And of course, at the end of the three panelists will be off asking you if you have any questions. You can either ask them publicly or you can wait to the end and ask them privately. That's entirely up to you. There is a registration form that's circulating, and I don't know where it is, but I would really appreciate your actually giving us your coordinates, not because I'm going to tell anybody about them, but because we plan to have more seminars like this in the future, and it's the best way I know of to inform people about them. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd really appreciate it. And I think, on that note, I'm just going to turn it over to Daniela to start.
So thank you so much for inviting me tonight here. Some of you know me. It's really nice to see some familiar faces, like Paul knows me for the day I arrived to Canada. Probably you have my bio, I guess, and Carol will see also. I've been in this field for about 14 years. I started at L'Arche for quite a few years, and then 5 years ago I switched to service coordination. And my role is to be the worker bank coordinator. Some of you probably emailed me or registered or seen me around to different presentations. So I will go with our mission. We are a provincial network, and what we try to do is to connect people via internet, but also we are available for those that don't use internet via just regular paper. Oops. Warren, I think I need you here. Okay. So this is where you can find respiteservices.com across Ontario. And when I say that is you can just go on our site and you'll choose the area of Ontario that you are looking to hire a special needs worker, and you can get in contact with a branch right there. So what I want to emphasize in this slide here is that this program, the Worker Bank, as it used to be called in Ottawa, it started 22 years ago, and was one of the parents that actually had an idea to start a program and offer it as an idea to Ottawa Children Treatment Center, as she was connected to the Children's Hospital. She was a nurse. And after being a project, it became the Worker Bank as a program with service coordination. As you see, 7 years ago, Geneva Center for Autism, they were looking for something more high-tech to connect people in Toronto, and they got a grant from the provincial network from regional ministry to have this respite services started. We adopted only 2 years ago because we had a system in place here in Ottawa, but we found that people wanted something much faster, online registration. We don't need papers, things like that. So we adopted 2 years ago. So what we do community connection. Here are just a few statistics for you, just to be aware. We are 37 chapters across Ontario, 3 bilingual chapters. These are the numbers in Ontario again, how many families are registered, how many clients or individuals, and workers as well. These are the latest numbers. If you go to the next slide, you'll see that in 2 years, I connected with about 700 people trying to register or find a special needs worker. So these are here in Ottawa. Next one. Families, so we were created in particular for families that receive any of those fundings. And you know them from just using different funds: Assistance for Children with Severe Disability, Autism Spectrum Disorder, Special Service at Home, and Passport. Next one. There is as well worker eligibility, and why I mention that is because we don't have the manpower and mandate to just take anybody who is interested to become a special needs worker. We register only people that have those criteria. Education and experience is very important, just because we don't offer any training, and we kind of expect people to start right away working with families. So what happens, we kind of reduce, we don't have like a big pool of candidates, but those that they have the skills and experience that they need. Next one. The recruitment process is pretty standard. Those are the documents that people need to present, as well as steps. Pretty standard, as I said, nothing sophisticated. We are looking for the special needs workers to also have the ability to work independently. Some of them work in group homes or day programs, so kind of a shelter environment, and it's kind of different type of world there to work with a family in the home. Next one. Who are the workers? We recruit a lot at Algonquin College. These are just a few other examples. Ottawa Youth on our list. Here next.
Oh, sorry, did I skip one of your slides?
Yeah, just one behind. again, people that they work in our field. We also take personal support workers or nurses that kind of came across people with developmental disability, so they don't feel like they treat people like in a hospital distance. Now they know they have the skills necessary to support the people that we serve.
Sorry, missed it.
Okay. The fee for hours, this is what usually we have as well on the website, but it's something that we suggest to people. And the reason for that is that you, as a parent, you're a family, you are the employer, so you have the liberty to decide how much to pay the worker. However, workers that just start working in the field, they don't know exactly how would I charge, is it, I overcharge or I undercharge a family. So these are just a few examples. One thing I want to mention is that I do explain to every single worker how families receive the money. So it's based on the needs. Some of the workers have a tendency to overcharge just because they work for school board or have higher pay rates. So I want them really to understand how you get the funds and then kind of meet you to that level. So again, this is just an idea for them to have when they look at fees. So how to overcome potential financial barriers, that's why we are here tonight. You can use respiteservices.com. It's a free program. And the picture is not very good. When you go on the website, you can post an ad, and I think that is one of the biggest advantages that this site has for you. But also you can see worker classified, meaning workers looking for to be hired. So those are the big advantages that kind of jump right there. The other part is that you could manage your own profile. So you create an account with Respite Services. Your information is kept confidential, and you could manage your profile anytime you need it. Like if you need right now a worker, you can create an ad. You don't necessarily need to have an ad if you don't want to, but the request is there. And based on the information that you put in, let's say the age of your child, the disability, the time that you need the worker, we use a database system that matches with the same information from the worker. So there are lots of advantages for the site. The other part is we can post an emergency request, for example. We can target all the workers that could match to your profile and send an email. Sometimes we have emergency situation in families, and a family may contact me on a Friday. Could you please post this urgent ad in the morning? So by the end of the day, we could potentially find a few special needs workers that you could contact and maybe hire them. So we are the broker. Sometimes people confuse our system with a placement agency. We don't place workers with you. And important to know, the information always goes from the worker to you. Never your information will be shared with the worker. Okay. We have another option that we decided to advertise for. If you have a family member, or if you have a good friend of the family that may know your son or daughter, and you find that with a bit of training they could be a really good support, you can offer them this site, Safeguards. It is a site that offers online training for parents, but also for caregivers. For the caregivers, there is a fee. I believe it's $20, and it's a course, online course, that could give them, those individuals, a good knowledge of what could be the dangers, what are the things that they could look at, what is a typical response to a certain individual. So it's something that you may want to check. If you look for yourself to kind of get a bit more information or on a small training, there is a free training for parents. So you can look at that, and you can do it on your own time. So keep in mind Safeguards. It is on the big, I put it on paper, don't know where the paper right now. So it's a one-pager as well that you can check. You have the website, go a little bit more into depth. We can go to the next. So this is about the special needs workers that work with us. And the way how I see it as a partnership in between you and me and the workers. Sometimes families do not tell me about the workers' performance, and so I don't know, or I find like 3 years after that worker was a bad worker. I need to know those kind of things, so I would strongly encourage parents to get back to me with feedback. I also give feedback to workers, and so growth could happen, but I need your help, basically. The other part that you need to know, you can hire more than one worker. You can hire as many workers as you need. So good communication, it's encouraged. As I said, I believe that this program was started by a parent. It became this online system because of the technology and your request as a parent. And I still believe there is place for growth. So just to let you know, there was supposed to be a meeting tonight at Service Coordination just about respite services. And one parent suggested, how about having a webcast? So we're exploring that, so you don't have to go to different places. So we're always open to listen to your feedback. So please contact me, contact us. Do you have some?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Let's go.
2 minutes.
I
Take
told
that.
him to give me like a 5 minutes warning because it can pop off. Okay, we can go to the next one. Okay, so we also encourage families to try to post on different other websites, and we give options and connections. We also have HRDC on our website. Some families were successful to find special needs workers by posting an ad. There are also agencies posting with HRDC, so it's a good place to post an ad if you find that you're not successful. There are lots of good people out there that want to help and they're looking for work. Those are other resources. My suggestion is just make sure you ask for a police check for the vulnerable sector. Very, very important. And when you ask for that, ask as well for a photo ID. We talked to Ottawa Police and they were really happy that we do ask that question because a paper is a paper. Make sure you have the name of the person with the date of birth. It's the person with the paper. Person. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Also on our website, you have here a few agencies that could offer respite. You have to know that their site, all of those on the website, they are live connections. So basically you can go to their information. We are just the facilitator. We do not manage their sites. So if you're looking for respite and see prices or maybe other programs, connect with them directly. So that's our suggestion. Same with the workers. If you would like to hire a worker, you connect the worker directly. Right. Next one. I want to bring this to your attention, the International Short Break Association. It's setting up a conference in Toronto, and this is looking at respite around the world. Believe it or not, there is such a conference. I'm planning to go. It sounds very, very interesting. If you'd like to go, we'll probably have some information back from there. There are people around the world looking for creative ideas for respite, and just you have the information there. You can go on their website. I'm not going to take your time with that, but just to let you know, about a year ago, a lady from Australia, from the Ministry of Community and Social Services from there, got a grant to do a bit of a study to see what's people how they find respite in Australia, in US, Canada, and UK. And I've seen her last report, and it looks like, and I think it makes us proud to live in Ontario. In a way, in Ontario we have respite services, but there is no such a system around. In the US, there is a similar system, but it's private. So, yeah, it's a good thing we have it, I guess. Go and check it out, and if you want to go, I suggest to go. I can see you there. Now, on the next slide, I know if you're interested, did any of you register with respitesource.com? Yeah? Okay. This kind of explains you how you could register. As I said, there is an online link that will bring you to the online form, but also you can download a form, or you could call our office and we can send you via mail the registration form. So, good. Here explains just step by step how to go. In case you would like to go, we can go to the next one. Classify ad, it's optional. Some people choose to have a classify ad. It's up to you. You don't have to put like super personal information. Just describe your son or daughter and the situation and how the worker, the ideal worker will look like, and then when do you need the worker. Again, it's a free, you don't have to pay anything for it. Free service. Next one. A lot of families get kind of scared, oh, I don't have a username and password. You don't have to have one. First you register, and after you get approved, you're going to receive a username and password that will allow you to update your profile again whenever you need to. Go to the next one. So it's yours to manage it. Here to the next one. So this explains how the matching process goes. There is no waiting list. That's another part. There's no waiting list. As I mentioned before, there is a worker profile, there's a family profile, and through the database, the two get connected. That's one way we match families to workers. The other way is a worker may see the classify ad that you post, so they will ask me to forward to you their profile. And the other way, the third way to match people is you will see a worker classifies, and you will ask me to send you their full profile so you could see more about that. Okay. I explained that. So this is important to know the file status. A lot of people would like to know where their file is. After the family registers or makes a modification to their profile, the file goes in pending until the coordinator approves it. After that, it's active or inactive, depending on if you're looking for a worker or not. Inactive doesn't mean the file is closed. It just means you're not looking for a worker, that's all. And archive means the family moved out of Ottawa or out of Ontario. Yeah. And if you want, that's another feature that I would like to speak about. Lots of families now could have access to respite out of Ottawa. So for example, if in the past you were not able to go to some functions out of the city, let's say to Toronto, now what you could do is you can connect with 5 minutes.
Oh, no, you're
So what you can do, you can connect with, while you're in Ottawa, you can connect with a chapter in Ontario, in Toronto, for example, if you go to a function in Toronto, and you could become active as a family there. They could find a special needs worker for you, a few profiles, and you will take a look at them, do maybe a phone interview, and when you go to Toronto, you can hire one of the workers. So while you're there, you can have a worker. We had a family that came for a surgery to CHEO, and they use our system they were from North Bay, so it is possible. And also, if you move from here to Toronto or somewhere else in Ontario, you could activate your profile in that area. So just contact the other branch. Unfortunately, we don't have connection to internet here, but if you go on the site, it's very simple. It's nothing to be scared about. So next, questions? Yes?
Are the workers given training on how to report the impact on the social life from a one-to-one worker situation? Because my experience is that we report how we fund our workers through invoicing, through passport, whatever. But the workers are often unaware of how to report that income and how much some of it out of pocket. So is there any training, is there?
In the orientation, yes, that's a really good question. There was a myth when I arrived to service coordination that those funds were not supposed to be reported. So I contact special services at home and I asked, can you just tell me what should I tell the workers? And the answer was, this is income, so workers need to claim it as an income. So I tell them, however, they're independent contractors, I don't know what they report or not, but if you need receipts, they should be offer you their name, signature, the amount of money that you pay them. So yeah, I do tell them they need to report this as an income, for sure. Did that answer you? Yeah. All right. Yeah, it's kind of hard to work in this kind of system, and we don't want to take too much over, because then it would be a lot of red tape. And so they're independent contractors here in Ottawa. They're independent contractors. We do tell them we have that orientation, but further than that, we don't have any authority.
So I think it's just in a matter of knowing what your obligations are as a family. When you
Yes.
get the funding from Passport.
Correct.
And then make sure the relationship is very clear between you and the worker and then Passport. I mean, this is
Correct. Yes.
For disability issues, which is in the Human Resources and Skills Development Canada. As I mentioned, our name does frequently change, so we've been HRDC, we've been Human Resources and Social Development, so it's now Skills Development. The Office for Disability Issues is essentially the focal point for disability issues in the federal government. There are a few programs that we administer, but certainly not all programs for people with disabilities are made available through ODI. They're in other departments of the government. We're also doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work on disability issues. So there's policy work, research. One of the programs that we administer that you may be familiar with is the Enabling Accessibility Fund, which provides funding to community-based organizations and others to make It's done as a periodic call for proposals. We've also been actively involved in the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, so that's another file that we're very much involved with. I'm about 7 years young to the federal government, and I've worked on this program since, I guess, about June 2008. So I've been with the program before it was actually implemented. It became available in December of 2008. And prior to that, I had spent a number of years working in the disability community for an independent living resource center in Victoria. So I'm going to take you through everything from the eligibility requirements for who's eligible for a plan. Right, so the RDSP is a long-term savings plan to help people with disabilities and their families to save for the future. To be eligible, an individual needs to be under the age of 60, eligible for the disability tax credit, and be a Canadian resident with a social insurance number. Now, if you're not familiar with the disability tax credit, it is administered by the Canada Revenue Agency, and it's a non-refundable tax credit that reduces the amount of income tax that an individual needs to pay. As I mentioned, it is administered by Canada Revenue Agency. In terms of what qualifies, there's a number of disabilities, or it could be the impact of multiple disabilities on a person's day-to-day living. So it's not tied to employability or about the impact of a disability or disabilities on day-to-day life. And on Canada Revenue's website, there is actually, and I think I have the link for it in the presentation, there's kind of a mini self-assessment that individuals can do to see if they might qualify. And there are a number of qualified practitioners who can actually complete it: physicians, optometrists, psychiatrists. So it's not just a person's general practitioner. So what's unique about the RDSP is that the government has two tools by which it helps people to further save with an RDSP. The first is the Canada Disability Savings Bond. So, can we go back to the grant for a second?
Sure.
And so the first is the Canada Disability Savings Grant. So depending on the amount that's contributed to a plan privately, as well as the beneficiary's family income, will pay up to $3,500 a year. And there's a maximum that will pay up $70,000 for the lifetime of the plan. And grants and bonds will be paid up until the end of the calendar year that the beneficiary turns 49. I'll talk a little bit later about why the grant and bond are only paid until age 49, but how an individual can establish a plan up until the age of 60. So then, and I think this is one of the challenges that we face with outreach. People hear a name like registered plan, and you're thinking that the only way you can benefit from it is by being able to pay money privately into it. We actually have a bond that's available, and it's available even if no contribution is ever made into the plan, and it's for low and modest income individuals. And we'll pay up to $1,000 a year, and it's up to $20,000 over the life of the plan. And again, like the grant, it's paid up until the end of the calendar year that the beneficiary turns 49. And again, I just want to repeat that no contributions ever need to be made. We didn't want it to be a program that only higher income people with disabilities and their families could benefit from. Okay, so I've been talking a little bit about the beneficiary. Like I mentioned before, the beneficiary is the person who's going to benefit from the plan in the future. Needs to be under the age of 60, eligible for the disability tax credit, and be a Canadian resident with a social insurance number. So then the holder is the person who is going to open and manage the plan. So if there's an individual under the age of majority, and of course age of majority varies across province and territory, it's usually the legal parent, but it may be a legal guardian or a public institution that opens the plan. In some instances where the beneficiary is over the age of majority but may not be able to open up, may not have the contractual capacity to enter into a plan, the legal guardian, institution, whatever, can also open a plan on behalf of the individual. One of the things I want to mention just before we go any further, what I'm taking you through now are the current rules as they exist. Budget 2012 has announced or proposed a number of enhancements. So I'm going to talk about some of these again at the end of the presentation to give you a sense of what may change, what we hope will change for the better, quite frankly. So to open an RDSP, the beneficiary or the individual with a disability or an individual on his or her behalf needs to contact a participating financial organization. What you'll find is that most of the financial organizations have gone with more of a call center model. So to have, because of the complexity of the program, to kind of have a specialized body of knowledge, application for the RDSP is often done by the phone. Now, we knew from the beginning that that could be a challenge for some individuals. So many of the financial organizations have certainly expressed a willingness to find ways to assist people if maybe they're not comfortable making application by telephone. For example, I could go and meet with a bank representative, and that call could be facilitated by the representative over the phone. Individuals are certainly encouraged to bring somebody to the meeting that they trust. So that's it was a concern. I know initially there were some challenges. I'm hearing more and more that people are having tremendous success with opening up their RDSPs and working with more that call center model. So the financial organizations each have their own form. There's not a prescribed form, so it's not something that's available for download from our website. The grant, there's a separate application for the grant and bond. It is a prescribed form. It's a government form. It's available from download from our website, but all of the financial organizations also have it. So in terms now of working with the plan, anybody's able to make a contribution to the plan with written permission from the holder, so the person who manages the plan. In essence, it's just a way for whoever's responsible for managing the plan to be able to do some, if they're wanting to do some longer term financial planning with respect of how much they pay in each year to attract the maximum grant or attracting the bond. It just allows the holder to have some control over the plan. There's no annual contribution limit, but there is a maximum lifetime contribution, and this is the private contributions. The limit's $200,000. And then contributions are permitted until the end of the calendar year in which the beneficiary turns 59. So this slide and the next essentially show the income thresholds for determining how much grant and how much bond an individual may be entitled to. So it's if the income is less than the 85,414, we'll pay a matching 3-to-1. And so it would be, we'd be paying $3,500 a year based on a $1,500 contribution. Now, these are the income levels for 2012. They're updated annually on our website. And then for the bond, the same applies. If the income is less than the 24,863, we'll pay the full bond. And then if the income range is between the 24,863 and the 42707, it's prorated. And then no bond is paid if the income level is over 42,707. So just, and before I move on to some of the new provisions, for determining the beneficiary's family income, if the beneficiary is under the age of majority, we'll be looking at the income for the parent or parents typically who are in receipt of the Canada Child Tax Benefit. When the beneficiary reaches age of majority, even if that individual remains, for example, in a financially dependent relationship with their parents or their guardian, we will only be looking at the individual's family income. And so that would be his or hers income as well as the income of the spouse. And so, for example, if an individual is in receipt of the ODSP over the age of majority, but perhaps they're still residing at home with a parent, they would be eligible likely for the full bond because the amounts for ODSP, of course, are lower than or they're higher than our income thresholds, I think. Just back up. So, Budget 2010 announced two significant enhancements to the program. And why I like to point that out is that they were based directly on feedback that we received from the community. We're very fortunate. There's been a lot of support for early in the program's implementation to make improvements to the program. So two of the issues that we heard were immediately reflected. The first is a carry forward for a couple of reasons. One, we're finding that awareness of the program is slow, building awareness. So we don't want people learning about the program 5 years from now and going, oh wow, I wish I had known 5 years ago and I could have benefited. This allows an individual to go back and be eligible for the grant and bond that they would have been entitled to had they opened a plan. It's going to be a 10-year carry forward, but right now it's back to 2008 when the program became available. So if you were to open a plan tomorrow, you would be able to go back and, provided the individual was DTC eligible for the disability tax credit, you'd be able to go back and access the grant and bond from 2008, depending on income levels and that sort of thing. The other is a rollover of retirement savings. And so the government allows the deceased individuals RRSP, RPP, and RRIF proceeds to be rolled over into the RDSP of a financially dependent child or grandchild with a disability. This slide is particularly important because, quite frankly, when I tell people, they often don't believe me. The first is that the federal government has fully exempted the RDSP, both as income and asset, from all federal benefits. So EI, old age security, guaranteed income supplement. So if a person is in receipt of one of those federal benefits, there's not going to be a clawback or an impact on eligibility if they have an RDSP. The second is that all provinces and territories announced at least a partial, but if not a full exemption of the RDSP. Ontario, for example, announced a full exemption. So if an individual has an RDSP, and it's sitting there as an asset, ODSP it's not going to impact their eligibility for ODSP or the amount of an individual's check. Down the road, when an individual is actually taking withdrawals from their RDSP, again, there's going to be no clawback. It's not going to affect the level of their check or their eligibility. The three provinces that did partial exemptions are Quebec, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island. And then contributions to an RDSP are not tax deductible, and they'll not be included in income when paid out of an RDSP. So this is probably my least favorite part of the presentation, only because this is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated. So there's two types of payments or withdrawals from an RDSP. One is called a disability assistance payment. We refer to it as a DAP. And that's just a withdrawal from the RDSP to a beneficiary. The second is what we call a lifetime disability assistance payment. So these are the regular withdrawals from an RDSP that must begin by the age of 60. They can start earlier depending on how you want to use the plan and kind of the financial planning that you've done. And then once started, the LDAPs must be there must be at least one annually. Now, there is a formula that determines how much money can be taken from the RDSP. I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes. And then just before we advance, what's not on the slide, if you're familiar with the RDSP, you probably noticed the 10-year rule. We call it the assistance holdback amount. Because the plan is intended to promote and ensure long-term financial security, there's a requirement that grants and bonds have to remain in an RDSP for 10 years. So if an individual takes a withdrawal from their RDSP and any grant or bond has been paid into the RDSP in the immediately preceding 10 years, that grant and bond would need to be paid back to the government. This is one of the things I'll talk about at the end, but I hope we were improving on a little bit. It's probably the most contentious issue of the plan. So then this is just talking a little bit about plan closure. And again, going back to the 10-year rule, the 10-year rule or the assistance holdback amount is triggered if the plan is closed, if the beneficiary loses his or her eligibility for the disability tax credit, or if the beneficiary passes away. So just to give you a sense of where we are with the program, it has been in effect since December 2008. There have been, just shy of 55,000 plans have been registered. I can tell you that it far exceeded our expectations in the first few years. We looked at other programs, for example, the Registered Education Savings Plan, and I would say our estimates were a little bit conservative, but uptake has greatly exceeded expectations. So it's a good news story for us. The government has already paid out about $315 million in grants and just under $148 million in bonds. So we say it's a good news story how many people have opened or how many people have registered plans. And I don't want to detract from that, but on the flip side, that's about 12% of people who are under the age of 60 and eligible for the disability tax credit. So while we've come a long way, we have a long way to go with promoting the program. We know through public opinion research, we know anecdotally, that awareness of the program remains low. But we also find that once people learn about the program, there's a real interest in take-up. But we're also finding that there's a gap between program awareness and take-up. So we're recognizing the importance of financial literacy, and that's why it's really, I'm really pleased to be here today, because even knowing about the program, given its complexity, given some of the challenges, we know that knowing about the program may not be enough for people to actually go out and register a plan. So I think it's really important that it's a part of this conversation. So budget 2012. For those of us in the government, we look forward to the budget, and more importantly, we look forward to seeing our program in the budget because it means things are going well for us. Back in budget 2007, and then again in budget 2010, the government made a really early commitment to review the program 3 years after it had come into effect to see if it was actually doing what it's supposed to do. Was it meeting the needs of Canadians with disabilities? That 3-year review was led by the Department of Finance this past fall, October, November. There were hundreds of written submissions made. We consulted with community-based organizations and individuals in 6 cities across the country. And it's the results of the 3-year review that have kind of informed budget 2012. I've got to tell you, we get pretty excited when we get 8 pages in the budget. That's encouraging for us. So what I want to do is just take you through a few of the announcements that were made in the budget, because I'm hoping with some of the challenges or some of the less favorable aspects of the program, I think what you'll see here is that the 3-year review has really facilitated and encouraged some enhancements to that. So the first, and I think this would be particularly relevant to all of you tonight, is changing the registration requirements to make it easier for a family member to establish a plan. For a person who doesn't have the capacity to enter into a contract who's over the age of majority, there's numerous frustrations and challenges with guardianship, the cost, the time involved, the fact that taking away an individual's dignity by having to go through this, the whole substitute versus supportive decision making. All of those issues have really been brought to light by the RDSP. So, and we've heard regular feedback that the current way is not working. So what Budget 2012 has proposed They've proposed an interim measure until 2016. So they're going to expand a little bit the definition of legal guardian and how an individual can make application. So a parent or a spouse or a common law partner will actually be able to be a plan holder and open an RDSP on an individual's behalf. An individual is not going to have to go through some of the legalities with bestowing guardianship. What the budget also says is by 2016, they're hoping that provinces and territories will look very closely at the issue to kind of streamline their provinces. The challenge is that guardianship is provincial and territorial jurisdiction. And so this is what the federal government is trying to achieve in the interim, with the hopes that down the road, provinces and territories. A few budgets ago, they had pointed actually to British Columbia, which has more of a supportive decision-making rather than a substitute decision-making capacity. So we'll see how that will unfold, but that was one of the proposals. Another is providing greater access to RDSP savings for small withdrawals. So we talked a little bit about the 10-year rule. All feedback is that it's incredibly punitive, so having to pay back the granting bond for the 10 years. What's being proposed instead is for small withdrawals, instead of having to pay back all of the grant and bond for the previous 10 years, that it would be what they call a proportional repayment. So it would be a 3-to-1. So if you borrowed or you withdrew $500 from your RDSP, you would have to pay back $1,500 in grant and bond. But let's say you had $10,000 that had been paid in the last 10 years, ordinarily you would have had to pay back the $10,000. That would be the $1,500. So it's still trying to promote long-term financial security and not making regular routine withdrawals from the plan, but not being as punitive if for whatever reason an individual needs to make a withdrawal. And then the third one on this slide is affording greater access to RDSPs by people with episodic disabilities. I mentioned earlier that if a person loses their DTC status, that the plan has to close. There are a number of people with episodic disability. Mental illness is immediately what comes to mind, but it could be more progressive disabilities like multiple sclerosis. Sometimes people have a temporary disability tax credit, they don't receive a permanent. So what this is going to allow for is for a plan to stay open. So if a physician, for example, indicates that a person's disability has a potential of reoccurring or progressing in a period of, I think they're working with 5 years right now, that the plan won't have to be closed. The plan can stay open. You can't make contributions into it, and you can't attract grant or bond, but you won't have to close the plan. Because quite frankly, if you've got an individual, and let's say a person has bipolar disorder, and they only have temporary disability tax credit, let's say the disability reoccurs, they have a manic episode, for example, the last thing you want to be thinking about is reestablishing your RDSPs. The hope is that this will be a bit of peace of mind for that. So 3 more. One is allowing the investment income earned on an RESP to be rolled over tax-free into an RDSP. This was, I would say, of all of the feedback we received during the 3-year review, guardianship, DTC, temporary DTC for people with episodic disabilities, and the rollover of the RESP investment income earned were probably the 3 things that we heard the most of. So for example, a parent opens up an RESP for their child when they're very young. Later in life, maybe because of the child's disability, the child doesn't go to post-secondary education. The investment income earned can be rolled over tax-free into an RDSP. So that's, or for example, maybe a child acquires a disability later in life, and they have an RESP already established. Again, the same circumstance. Now, changes to the annual maximum withdrawal limit. I have to admit, I'm still getting my head around this one. We have what are called primarily government-assisted programs. So it could be for those plans that have had more grant and bond paid into them than private contributions. The formula for determining how much money you can take out of an RDSP is impacted depending on whether an individual has paid more privately with a contribution or if the government has paid more. We recognize that there's a bit of a disparity in how the plans are treated, so they're going to look to adjust that to kind of level the playing field, so to speak. And then the final, which is kind of the administrative behind the scenes, but actually has an impact on consumers with disabilities, is that there are a number of administrative rules in terms of when the financial organizations need to submit applications, information to us to verify. If those time periods extend for too long, sometimes it can trigger the plan being deregistered or never being registered to begin with. We're taking the steps to get rid of those so that people with disabilities aren't impacted if it's taking us a little bit longer behind the scenes to get things going. We'll still work with the financial organizations very closely to make sure that information is received on a timely basis, but that's what that's intended to alleviate. And so then just here's some contact information. As I mentioned, behind the scenes at Bayshore SDC, it's CRA. When I'm not talking to the community about the RDSP and how they can best access information, we talk a lot about seamless service delivery. We don't want people getting caught in telephone trees. We don't want people calling one branch of the government and being tossed around to various numbers. So what I suggest is if a person has high-level questions about the RDSP, they're not sure if it's Canada Revenue, they don't know if it's HRSDC, you call Service Canada, which is the 1-800 Canada. An individual answers the phone, they answer the phone, it's bilingual, so it's not press 1 for English, press 2 for French, and they have enough knowledge about the program that if need be, they'll do a gentle single referral to either HRSDC or Canada Revenue Agency. For many of you in this room, I suspect your questions are going to be much more specific, or you already have plans established, and therefore that information is going to be too high level for you. The number under grant and bond, the 1-866, I would encourage you to call that number. It's a what we call a tier 2, so it's a subject matter experts that can respond by TTY, telephone, or email. They are able to help you negotiate specific details about your plans. For example, you've got a question about why bond hasn't been paid or why grant hasn't been paid. They'll be able to assist you with that, but also very technical questions about the program. And quite frankly, if the question would have been more appropriately sent to CRA, they're not going to send you to CRA. They'll get the answer and they'll get back to you. So that's what I would really encourage, quite frankly, to manage any frustrations you may have with getting caught in telephone trees and being bounced around. So at the most, you're going to have one gentle referral from 1-800 Canada to one of the subject matter experts.
Thank you, Lisa. Yes, that was fantastic, actually. And coming from the financial services industry, lots of detail. And we'd actually go to someone like Lisa and ask her to present at Advocus. Advocus, I'll tell you a little bit about Advocus and who we are. We are the Financial Advisors Association of Canada. We've protected the interests of Canadians by holding its members to a code of conduct, ensuring they continue to pursue opportunities for professional development to better serve the clients' needs and lobbying government on behalf of its members and their clients. Our motto, non solus nobis, which stands for not for ourselves alone. Everything we do is from the perspective of the consumer. So everything we do as financial advisors is to protect as well yourselves as well as us as well, because we are the consumer as well, so we're our own clients. Advocus is particularly concerned with creating a fair playing field for both national service providers and small independent financial advisors. It's all about providing choice for the consumer and ensuring a competitive marketplace. This means that the clients who turn to Advocus members for financial advice will benefit from a full range of financial services, including estate and retirement planning, wealth management, risk management, and tax planning. Advocus Ottawa, we're over 500 members across Canada, 11,000 members. We're one of the biggest chapters in Canada, and we're all the time in communities, community events, and so on and so forth. We'd like to think, for us, adding to Lisa, in financial services, we're the solution. So if you're going into an RDSP, you'd want to seek your financial advisor, and he'll be able to give you maybe not as much detail, but definitely some options on where to put that money. And that's it.
It's really important to have a will in place for the individual, because if there isn't a will in place naming where the remaining proceeds in an RDSP would go, then it's probably going to end up in probate. So we really strongly encourage that an individual has a will.
There's no drawback by the government for bond When the beneficiary passes away, like any of the other triggers for the 10-year rule, any grant and bond that's been paid into the plan in the immediately preceding 10 years would be paid back to the government. Any additional grant and bond, any private contributions, and any investment income earned will go to the beneficiary's estate. And one thing I do want to mention that I didn't talk about in the presentation, it's an oversight on my part. There were some changes made to the shortened life expectancy provision. So there's always been a provision that if a person is going to live for less than 5 years, that certain conditions applying, they could access money in their plans. That was changed a little bit in budget 2011 for the better. They can still access that money, but the grant and bond doesn't need to be paid back to the government upon taking a withdrawal. When the beneficiary passes away, any remaining grant and bond in the plan, like with the typical plan closure, would be paid back. But having a short life expectancy and taking a withdrawal from the plan is not immediately going to trigger the repayment of the grant bond.
Any other questions?
Does an individual with a disability need to have a substitute decision maker, that kind of thing, in order to be eligible for this?
That's what this interim provision is trying to get away from. It's uncomfortable for the financial organizations having to make a determination about a person's contractual capacity. It's quite frankly not, it kind of takes away the autonomy of an individual, for example, with a developmental disability. So what'll be able to happen now is that, and I say happen now, it'll come into effect when they have to make changes to the Income Tax Act. That's about as dry as it gets. But once they make the changes to the Income Tax Act this summer, but until the budget's passed and all of that government speak, and that provision will hold into place until 2016. The good thing is, like let's say for example, the provision comes into effect, you become a plan holder on behalf of your adult child with a disability. In 2016, when that interim measure is discontinued and the intent is to have provinces and territories with more streamlined processes, it's not going to change anything. You'll be able to retain holdership. You're not going to then be subjected to whatever new provisions come into effect. You're welcome.
Yes, you over there.
More along with that, and maybe it's a simple question, but let's say I open the plan on behalf of my son, but I'm not young and I die, and in my mind, I would have, because you happen to have many, a sibling take over ownership of it. How would that happen? Could it be happen, or would that have to be written in wills and all that?
The same way that you would establish legal guardianship for your child in any other aspect, you would do the same thing. It's not, you can't say in your will, for example, I would like to give his or her brother or sister responsibility upon my death. You'd have to go through the same mechanism that you would for any other matters.
And under that mechanism, you would specify this plan that they are now
Legally responsible, yeah. You're welcome.
Yes, go ahead.
I think one thing that I see quite often as an advisor is at the table, quite often parents are not on top of getting their powers of attorney in place when the child turns to age 18. And we're so used to looking after our kids at home, just assume that everything is okay, and all of a sudden you get into a situation where you have financial paperwork or legal paperwork to do, and realize that without that power of attorney in place, you're really at a roadblock. So, as long as you have a power of attorney, there's a lot of things you can do at the table. You can sign on behalf of that individual with a copy of the power of attorney, which then goes with the paperwork that we send through our brokers to make sure that we're doing the right thing and getting the right signatures on those documents. So make sure that you have those documents in place as quickly as you can. And if you don't have them, it's not a big deal. It's still possible to do that. A lot of lawyers in town are aware of situations like this. They can do an assessment. They can work with you and try to get that so you get that power of attorney in place so you don't run into this problem.
one of those behind-the-scenes administrative changes that I mentioned. There's a form that needs to be, there's a transfer form that needs to be completed. And it's available on our website, and I trust the financial organizations have it as well. What we're going to change in the legislation is to make it easier for us to transfer all of the historical information to follow your RDSP. So we're trying to work behind the scenes to make that a smoother process. But yes, you can go into a financial organization, or download the form and complete it to transfer to a second, to transfer to a second institutions. I don't know. But I'm happy to find out.
Well, generally, anytime you're transferring money from one institution to the next, there's a 2-week period. 2-week period after 2-week period, usually the financial organization will call the second financial organization what's going on, and we try to track it from there. So the transaction should be done within 2 to 4 weeks, generally speaking. What tends to hold it up a lot of times is the paperwork, sometimes missing paperwork, missing signatures, and so on and so forth. So in this case, there are forms online that we would have, and most financial institutions have those forms as well. So it shouldn't, it shouldn't take no more than maybe 6 weeks tops.
Yeah, I mean, most things are done kind of in batches, essentially. Like, the financial organizations are typically submitting information to us on a monthly basis, and then within those next 1 or 2 weeks, we're facilitating the process. So, yeah, no, that's a good explanation.
Yeah.
I have a question. Maybe I don't need it. Can a testamentary trust, we're talking about financial planning, can a testamentary trust hold a mortgage?
You'd have to ask me afterwards, for sure. Yeah. It's a little complicated.
Do we have any other questions? Questions about respite, questions about RDSPs? No questions about testamentary trusts? No. Oh,
Just a comment about the respite housing facility that matches Danielle, you know. There, on the profile of the workers, you have the languages French and English. I'm wondering if it could be an option to put either minimum or fluent French or English, because I found that, it takes time and energy to coordinate the interviews and everything else. And you come to meet the worker who supposedly speaks English or French, and then the limited language of choice could be a barrier for the connection with the
It's a really good point, and thank you all for bringing that. It's just from experience and what we learned basically. So I do ask families and workers if they're looking for a worker to post the ad in the language that they want to hire the worker. So if a family is looking for an English worker, post it in English. If it's for French, just French. Same thing for the workers. We don't have lots of, technical abilities to kind of play with the language at this point, and we don't have money to expand the site. So I ask workers if they offer services in French or in English or both, to make their ad both English and French, even if it's the same thing. So if you may see an ad of a worker in French, that means the worker speaks only French. If you see the ad in both languages, that means it's bilingual. And if you have questions, just send me an email or call me. So I'm at the office every day, Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. So more than happy to talk to you. Right, Carol? Yes. So yeah, we don't have at this point, the classify ads, we can see them all together because we're only 3 chapters, and it costs a lot to develop the site, and as I said, we don't have the money. So that's the only way that we could sort them out, English, French, or bilingual. Is that answering to you? Yeah?
okay. Just for all the people who may have been wondering, and I apologize for not saying something earlier, but the reason we have been recording this is because a lot of people, for family circumstances, can't get out to an event, and we thought, well, then we will edit down the evening and offer it online and see if more people will be able to have access to the So it's not going any further than as an information piece. And you all look beautiful. Thank you again, everybody, for coming out to this first seminar. I know that all our panelists are happy to talk to you individually. There's probably more coffee and cookies available there. And if you have any other questions that I can answer in my own simple way, I'll be glad to try and do so. Thanks again.